Hello and welcome to this episode of Rise of Humanity. I am your host, Chris Karamaya, and today I'm joined by my guest and fellow podcaster, Amrit Sandhu. Amrit is founder and host of the podcast Inspired Evolution and is sharing inspirational stories from influential and entrepreneurial leaders with the goal of helping people to live more empowered lives and lift human consciousness in the process. Amrit's work is very much aligned with what I'm doing here at Rise of Humanity, and he is a very welcome guest here. So, Amrit, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
It is an absolute blessing to be here, brother. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
No problem. Amrit, could you just give us your best you? Because I've heard you making this. This
I thought you'd never ask. Alas, I can't go a podcast without the you.
Brilliant. It's awesome. What is it? Is it just? Is it like a celebration? I mean, how do you kind of see it?
Oh, brother, there's I have no idea how I see it. To be honest, I guess celebration's an interesting one because I guess it does have that. I've never really sat down to analyze it. But yeah, it's something that I don't know, it was a noise that I generated. I used to go to a couple of music festivals here and there, and it just used to be a noise I used to generate, and my mates were like, just don't do that again. And obviously it was like, okay, tell me not to do that again and I'll do it 10 times more. And so it sort of stuck with me there, but I didn't bother my mates too much with it. And then just recently it's totally become something that I've owned. Like even in social media, I'm just like when something excites me, it's got that excitement for me and just that and it just feels like rising energy every time I put it out there. It feels like a lift, and so it's just something that I don't know where it really came from, but yeah, that celebration vibe is definitely a vibe that's in there somewhere. Excitement is in there somewhere. Exclamation is totally in there somewhere. But yeah, I guess that's kind of what's going on.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. It's kind of like an anchor in a way. I love to do the fist pump because that really makes me feel like channel some strong energy, and that's kind of it. So I suppose that's kind of the way I see it is kind of your equivalent to my fist pump.
Yeah, I think it's probably something that sounds about right.
Awesome. So whereabouts exactly are you calling from, Amrit?
Melbourne in Australia.
Nice.
Yeah, nice part of the world. Melbourne is probably, obviously I'm biased because I live here now, but it's the cultural hub of Australia, the cultural city, I guess the cultural capital of Australia. Sydney's probably more the commerce capital. I'm originally from a place called Adelaide, which is down south in Australia. Small town, it's a town, but it's a city because it's got 1 million odd people there. Great place to grow up, also a great place to retire. But that's kind of the vibe of the place as well. So it's a bit of a student town meets retirement village sort of feel to Adelaide. And just in the middle of your life, when you're between like, I'd say about 25 to about 50, there's just so much more to experience and all the flavours and wonder of life that Melbourne really has a lot to offer.
Yeah.
And so I moved to Melbourne.
Sounds great. And how do you enjoy the weather? Because I think for me that would just definitely be one of the biggest things, just being in the sun. I love it.
Yeah, well, Melbourne is not an accurate reflection on the rest of Australia when it comes to weather, that's for sure.
Okay.
4 seasons in a day here. Australia is, like everywhere else, is beautiful weather. I used to say that once I've hacked my perfect reality, it probably look like something like 6 months in Queensland during the winter months of Australia, because it's quite tropical up there, and in winter in cities like Brisbane it's between 25 and 30, all throughout winter, which is perfect.
Nice.
And in summer I'd like to spend some more time in Melbourne, because Melbourne really comes alive in summer as well, and just further south. So yeah, Melbourne, interesting weather, rain, sunshine. It's the only it's the only place where you leave your house with like umbrellas and sunglasses on the same day on a regular. You don't know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
But you guess you get used to it. Yeah, you get used to it.
Yeah, sounds good. So, let's talk about your podcast, Inspired Evolution. What was your inspiration behind starting that, and what do you have a specific aim in mind to that you want to achieve through that?
Um, it was interesting because I recorded an episode today, and I got some real clarity on the fact that I didn't really need. I'm not really aware of what the outcome is. Like I'm on a journey. I'm aware of that. But in terms of what the desired outcome of that journey is, like whether where I'm going with it, I'm not entirely sure yet. And so it's been interesting because I guess what birthed it was so at the where do I guess I got to start from the beginning. This is storytelling, right? So I at the beginning of the year I traveled to Africa, which was really amazing. I've traveled to 42 countries now, and one of the most amazing, or probably the crowning experience of all those travels, Safari, Kenya. Like, if there's any one thing that I have to recommend to someone, it's please go on safari in Kenya. It completely transforms your life. You spend obviously direct contact with nature and really inspiring nature, but then also you get to meet the local tribes people, and you really see how much social programming you've been exposed to when you meet people that live amongst the hyenas and the lions, and they're still living a very different lifestyle to you. Really boils down what the core essence of being human really is, and yeah, so that was really transformative. And so on the back of that, after that, I did some travels to South America and Central America. And there was a lot of, I guess the mission was a lot of inner work that I did. And when I returned to Australia, I basically, something shifted in that when I came back, I couldn't really, I haven't been able to see alcohol the same way. And I bring this up because it sort of gives, and it's interesting how this sort of gives way into the podcast, but yeah, not being able to drink alcohol turned into me still being an extrovert, but still wanting to socialize.
Yeah.
And realizing really quickly that alcohol was a social lubricant. And, I never really had, no, I had some issues with alcohol, binge drinking issues with alcohol. I was widely celebrated for binge drinking amongst my mates. And so it's just celebrated in the Western culture. So, I was encouraged to do that.
Sorry to interrupt. I just
quite a competitive individual.
To mention, it's so weird that you say that, because I went on a 6-month trip to South America in 2015, and I came back and I haven't drunk alcohol since.
Yeah, whoa, yeah. Like, what is the energy of that, right? Like, it's bizarre. Yeah, to the point, I'm gonna put this out there. Like, every time I see someone, this is not from a place of judgment. This is just me reflecting my process out there. Is when someone picks up a glass of a red or a beer at the moment. When I witness them, it's the same as them pulling out a cigarette, and I just, there's a big part of me that identifies that that's not healthy for me. It's not healthy for you. And you might be addicted or something, and whatever your process is around that, it's not for me.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't align with the idea of that's literally just, I'm just putting something toxic in my system. And I didn't really ask for this perspective. It was really strange that this sort of shift happened. And yeah, so having that shift and that awareness shift, and then now still wanting to socialize because I'm still an extrovert, I basically created, I started inviting people to my home every fortnight. I created this philosophy. The premise was chai, chats, and community, basically for people to come over. So because I'm Indian by heritage, I brew a pretty mean chai, and I'm always really enjoyed chats. And I threw community in there just because it was 3 C's. But yeah, it turned into this really beautiful thing. It was a philosophy, spirituality night. It was just basically sharing, and I set the agenda to. I got really conscious about a few things. The first being that we're the average of the 5 people we spend our time with. And so even though I work long hours, I realize that in my downtime, at least the time that I, do have more control over, let's say, I'm working gently towards having control over all of my time. I want to be able to just be the average of the 5 people I spend my time with. So I really set the intention of the people that I invited to this philosophy, spirituality, personal development night to be people that would inspire me to grow. And so these individuals that came along were, if any one of them arrived, I would have an enlightening conversation that would push me further to better myself in some way. And that started off with about 20 people. I just literally created a Facebook group, and I started with 20, and now there's, I think, 110 in the group.
Wow.
And the first night there was 2 people that came, and since then, we've had nights where there's been, I think, at most about 18 people at any given time, and it's been really amazing. It's phenomenal. We discuss things like gratitude, stoicism, just you name it, we've discussed it in terms of just what's coming through. We've discussed Jung and his perspective on the world, a lot of psychology, archetypes, all sorts of stuff, and it's been phenomenal, just in the essence of building a tribe, building a community, co-creating, sharing space together, just sharing ideas, and I've learned a lot about myself through this process. People often reflect back like, it's really cool that you're doing this, and I'm like, I'm not really. It's coming from a place of, it's almost borderline selfish in the purest way possible, because I'm basically having like a personal development, personal growth thing in my living room every fortnight, where the best people I know come and collect and discuss like amazing things, and I'm just paying to put on some chai, and so it's been this really interesting journey, really rewarding. It's the first time I've ever experienced the whole in action, the philosophy of filling up your own cup first. People talk about, fill up your own cup and then share from that space. And I heard that wisdom a lot, but I never really found anything that really satisfied that until I conducted what is called mandala moments. That's the name of the night. And mandala moments, basically, out of that, a few people recommended that, the topics and the conversations would be great in a podcast. And to be honest, brother, I was initially deterred to pursue this, purely because one of the things about mandala moments that I'm most attracted to is the group essence of it, and how people learn from each other. So just I'll just use some names, but like Nat would learn something from Jason, and Jason would learn something from Paulo, and Paulo would learn something from Amrit, and Amrit would learn something from Kirsty, and Kirsty would learn something from Steph. So there was this like weaving, we're sitting in a circle and we're just sharing ideas and thoughts as a cohesive unit. There was no guru, there was no, I guess, part of me is aware that when you see 2 people sitting up on a stage preaching to you, a lot of people are sort of in need of a cleaner way to put this, is they're handing over their power to sort of saying, please, you teach me. It's like you're not really sitting in your own sovereign being and saying, there is something that I can share and I have some level of value. It's like, no, you're just better than me, so I'm here to learn from you. Which, in some cases I can see the value in it, but I think that time is evolving now, especially with the way networks are set up now, and communication is evolving. I think now everybody has something of valuable. I think probably always people have had something of value to share, and I think it's really interesting to sort of see it in a group dynamic where people rise up and they share from each other the innate wisdom that's coming out. So I've really enjoyed that process. And so for podcasting, for me, kind of felt like a bit archaic in that, it was me and one other person having a conversation, hoping that other people would get something out of it. So I didn't really resonate with that. Since then, I guess basically the opportunity to podcast, I believe a lot in synchronicity and signs and flow. And I just got to a point where the opportunity to do a podcast availed itself, and basically we found a mentor, and it was like, okay, well that's a pretty clear sign, and I wasn't ready to do it, but I sort of jumped into it and just gave it a crack, and it's been really rewarding. So throughout this year, through mandala moments and whatnot, I got really clear on just been really clear on my values and what my values are. And so connection is one of my highest values. And then realizing that the podcast can facilitate my value a little bit further. I can work with that value on a deeper level once more. Just realizing that it satisfies a value that means so much to me. Obviously, Mandala Moments, the philosophy night, is all about connection. A room full of people connecting to each other and learning. And one of my other values is wisdom. And so people learning about wisdom from each other because they've had these experiences. The podcast is in a similar vein where, I get to connect with people that I otherwise would not have had connections to. Because would you like to be on my podcast happens to be a very different question to would you like to meet me for a coffee? And so I've been really excited to do this podcast, and it's, to be honest, I've been talking for a while, but to be honest, I've been aware for a long time that I was not looking, but passively looking for a vehicle that I could invest myself in that would help me grow, like something that I would put work into and it would put work back into me, and I would put work into and it would put work back into me. And there's a lot of things like this in the personal development space, but I've always had kind of a struggle with them because it's like the Facebook marketer that's teaching the Facebook marketer to Facebook market to people to teach them to Facebook market to people on Facebook, and it's like this hollowness that appears when people are trying to teach people. And so in terms of looking at a vehicle in that respect, it was like I had this ickiness towards it, and then now I kind of see, because that was like all about money and stuff, and I've got some hang-ups about that at the moment. I'm trying to work through my relationship with money quite deeply at the moment. So this podcast really presented itself as the vehicle I sort of passively had been looking for about 3-4 years. In that, it's not about money. It's literally just, so me trying to so my ideal guest on my podcast is Narco Bear, the musician, and just being able to realize that there's resistance to reach out to him initially was this massive self-reflection on that, okay, is that self-worth stuff? And I really got to look in on myself, and it was like, wow, this is the vehicle that can help me grow. Like all of a sudden I've got something that's sitting behind me going, okay, well, you can get this guy on the show. And it's like, yeah, why am I not sending the email? And it's like, right, okay, and so in that regard, it really afforded itself and presented itself and was like, time is now, let's go. And so, in that, now I get to sit with my self-worth stuff. I get to see where I've got resistance in terms of just working towards what I want to do. Why am I not exercising something that is my highest value, connection towards people that inspire me the most, And so coming full circle in that vein, hence the name of the podcast, Inspired Evolution, because fundamentally it's my inspired evolution. I'm trying to inspire myself and evolve within. And I'm hoping to, the rise of humanity. I'm trying to not bring as many people along as well, but inspire as many people to just think or feel or tune into their hearts that like a similar sort of vibe, and just provide that as a service and sort of document my process through it.
It's an amazing story. I'm really glad for you that you found this and something that's obviously working for you. I mean, the Mandala Moments, that's the awesome idea. But I found in my journey, and why the podcast is so useful for me, is because I'm not surrounded by those like-minded people at all. Like, there's literally no one that I can like ring up and like, let's I mean, I can go out for coffee and with people, but there's no one I can really ring and have those kind of deep conversations with, except my brother and my family maybe, and that's about it. So the podcast for me, and the power of the internet, has opened up an opportunity to start connecting with like-minded people who I otherwise wouldn't be able to connect with. So I completely see from my journey how much of a door it's open, really, to be able to connect with like-minded people. So Yeah, I'm really glad for you that you've found this new project for yourself. And how? I mean, it's early days for you, yeah. Obviously, how are you finding the podcasting in terms of connection as opposed to the meetups that you did? I mean, are you hoping that you can build an audience that you'll really be able to connect with online?
Um, they're two very different things that have similar symptoms for me physically, and that's kind of a weird sort of thing to put out there. But um, I guess I'm just aware that, okay, so a message that I'm holding on to is the idea that health and purpose are exactly the same. So when you're on purpose, you're healthy, and when you're healthy, you're on purpose. Um, and the example I often use is Beyonce. So she goes and goes without food for without eating or sleeping for 3 days, recording music videos because that's her flow. She's in max flow, right? That's what she's here to do. She can find abundant health arriving from the universe to contribute what she's here to contribute because she's on purpose. But if I rocked up to Beyonce and said, "Here's a shovel, dig me a hole for the next 3 days straight," she'll give up in the first 30 minutes, right? So that's my example for health and flow, and so health and purpose. And so I guess I share that because before I go into mandala moments, I get really energized, like physically the symptoms, and this is why it was sounding kind of kooky before, but I'm trying to put it into context is, yeah, like I get really energized before the gatherings, and like I just feel like, yes, like I'm doing something that I really enjoy doing, and this is more aligned with what I think I'm here to do or feel that I'm here to do, and there's no denying the feeling because my body is literally like it's switched on. It's like I've had 4 coffees and I'm ready to go, but I haven't drunk any coffee. And then afterwards, at the end of the night, when everybody leaves, like I struggle to sleep. Like there's 4 or 5 hours of me just cannot sleep because there's just so much energy, and the podcast is the same. So prior to the podcast I get really excited and really energetic, even though if I was having a terrible day before it, and then after the podcast I'm again really energetic, and so I sort of read into that as being symptoms of a process. And so in that vein they're both very similar, and I think that's because they're facilitating my value of connection, and that happens to mean a lot to me. And so they are similar, but again they're very different, in that again one has generally been one-on-one, whereas the other is to a room full of people, and I think I explained before the kind of difference between those two atmospheres. And with the podcast at the moment, I'm enjoying just learning, like I'm a growth junkie, I guess. I'm addicted to growth. I really enjoy growing and changing and evolving, and so for me, everything that's happening at the moment, I'm in the learning curve. I'm definitely in the lower part of that S. So everything that's coming my way at the moment is just next step, next step, next step. Things are failing left, right, and center a lot, and things are succeeding left, right, and center a lot, and it's really just been this transformative process that I'm absolutely in awe and in love with all of it, the mess and the beauty. So yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, getting on this path, has it been smooth sailing throughout your 20s, or have you faced challenges along the way?
There's definitely been some formative challenges. It's interesting you bring up that age bracket. So through my adolescence, I'm 29 now. I struggled with depression for about 5 to 7 years, and a lot of that had to do with growing up, I guess, with an Indian heritage in a Western culture. So Eastern heritage, growing up in a Western culture, there was just a conflict of inner realities and external realities, and expressing myself fully, because I'm aware that depression is just the opposite of expression, what you and I are doing here. And so if you can express, then you're not depressed. And so struggling with depression for about 5 to 7 years, where I just it was just really difficult to be my true self, and I really felt that at the time that everybody was in a way living a life that was a lie. It wasn't just me that was living a life that was a lie, that was a charade. And, you know, that kind of just brought me down more. Until I basically, yeah, like my whole world basically came crumbling down around, you know, this life that I like was projecting that I was living as opposed to the life that I actually was living. And I went and sought help, and when I went and sought help, it was like, you know, this is very common, and I was like, oh wow, and like, yeah, this is very, very common, and it's completely normal, and you're gonna be all right in a couple of weeks to a month. And I clearly remember them telling me that, and just going like, I'm not a violent person. It's just not really my vibe. And I got really angry that, like, you know, it was almost like my depression for so long was discounted into something that could be remedied in like 2 weeks. You know, why did I struggle for this long? And the idea was that they presented was that, you know, because I'm aware that something is wrong, that's 80% of the battle. You know, once you're aware that something's wrong, you're already willing to change. And so out of that, basically, fast forward, you know, like they tried to prescribe me antidepressants, which I never took. But out of that, they gave me a breathing exercise, which really changed my life. And it was so simple. It was so simple. Like, and again, when they introduced me to that breathing exercise, I got really angry because it was literally just counting my breath, coming in and going out up to the number 5 and back down from the number 5. So I'd breathe in 1, breathe out 2, breathe in 3, breathe out 4, breathe in 5, and then backwards, breathe out 4, and just keep doing that in a cycle, and just focusing my mind on the numbers that I was counting and just breathing deep. And it, at the time, I was so angry that this sounded so stupid. And then when I went into situations where I was like, my anxieties would flare up, and, you know, I'd feel really down, I'd remember and I'd breathe, and it completely changed my state. And I was blown away by this magic. I was like, what is this?
Wow.
And I discovered that basically it was mindfulness.
Yeah.
And then mindfulness gave way to a practice of meditation, which is, yeah, completely changed my life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the meditation next. I mean, are you an avid meditator then? Is it definitely a big part of your practice then?
Yeah, brother. Yeah, you know, I you know, like I said before, you know, I'm all about growth and you know, connection and wisdom and love are probably my driving values. And, you know, connection fundamentally to the self was something that I never really paid attention to until I came across meditation, really connecting to myself. And then wisdom, and realizing that, you know, wisdom is knowledge that has had action behind it, you know, and there's so much wisdom inside that I've never reflected on. And there's so much wisdom waiting to pour out that, you know, you just got to dial in to have a look at the answers that are within. And so meditation really gave me that space to go within myself and really understand myself. And, you know, I'm still only a sliver of the way of really getting there, but, you know, like, it's, you know, I think that's a lifelong journey and probably many lives of that process. But it's one that I really relish. I really enjoy it, and it's been phenomenal, brother. It's a cornerstone practice, and for me, at its most raw, basic level, it can just be about stillness and silence.
Yeah.
You know, and you're always moving. Actually, when I sit down in stillness, I'm aware that, you know, the planet is always moving. The sun is actually moving around in the galaxy, you know, and all of that is moving. So even when I'm trying to be still, movement is consistently happening, and it's just a matter of me appreciating movement. And then I usually meditate before I work out these days. And so, I'm aware that the stillness really helps inform the movement a lot better as well. And then also silence, just giving like the time of reset, just a little bit of time to reset that, because so much is audio and visual in today's society, especially. That we're all so caught up in the audios and the visuals and our phones that it almost feels like a little hack to have time where you sit down for yourself and just, I don't even call it disconnecting, it's just observing, your responses to everything and, how everything is going. And so for me, it's a cornerstone practice, brother. It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely been a big thing for me. Not something that I kind of suddenly stumbled across and I was like, this is it, kind of maybe in the way that you experienced it, but it's been a gradual kind of process over a number of years, really, just tapping in and out and experimenting. I mean, there's so many different ways you can meditate, and there's so many different aims, and there's so many different like awarenesses that you can have from meditation. So it's just it's an awesome practice, really, to begin to tap into understanding what consciousness really is about, and the multi-layered person that you are. So yeah, I can definitely recommend meditation as well. So I'm curious, obviously that played a big part in your progress. Was there a kind of an external shift that coincided with coming out of this depression, like with regards to work or anything like that? I know you worked as an engineer. I just wonder if there's a shift that occurred externally.
Yeah, totally. So for me, I've always been, I guess, in my personality, a bit all or nothing is definitely kind of my vibe. And so at the time when I was struggling with my depression, I was living in Adelaide back home. And once I kind of got diagnosed and, really came face to face with the idea that, and then got a label for it, which in this case it was kind of helpful to get a label for it. I'd just been overseas and I just got home, and my counselling and support network was like, don't leave, because what I realised was there was a lot of being in the same environment that was extra challenging for me to change and evolve. And I had not similar situations, but other situations in my past where if I took a drastic change, like completely put myself in another environment, it was almost like a reset and go again. And so basically I left Adelaide and I moved to Brisbane for 6 months, and much to the disappointment to everybody that was trying to counsel me, everyone that was trying to support me, a lot of my friends at the time, I lost a lot of friendships in that process. People didn't understand why I did what I did. But yeah, so my internal and external, like me literally realizing what I had, owning it, and then going, this is not healthy for me, and my external environment has a lot to do with that. And not blaming my external environment, but just realizing that, now I've got this sort of awareness that we're all nodes in a network. But in that, being that node in that particular network, I needed to shift into a different network. And so basically I displaced myself from Adelaide to Brisbane and completely just started again, and then moved from Brisbane to Melbourne to get where I wanted to be. And so that was a massive, if I hadn't have done that, I don't think it would have been, today's story wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that, because the big thing for me was jobs, and having the courage to leave a job and say, well, just because I'm making money, but it doesn't matter if it's making me completely miserable, then it's not going to serve me in the long term. And it's I think one of the big fears that people have is making changes in their external, but by not doing that, it keeps you glued to the very thing very state really that's making you miserable.
Yeah, that really resonates. That's something I'm in the process of working with in the next, at present actually.
Yeah, it is a process, but especially, I mean, going back to what you're talking about at the beginning with the mandala moments, just as an example, surrounding yourself with those people, that's a hugely powerful thing you can do. So I applaud you for that. But So,
Thank you.
Amrit, let's talk about, because I watched your video logs, let's talk about this Tony Robbins seminar because you look like you having the time of your life.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, so where does one begin? So I guess I can't really start the story without explaining how I got there. So my partner, we've been together about 6.5 years, and she has been traveling the world for the last 10 months on a mission to find purpose and passion. And she recently came home, but before she came home, Tony Robbins decided he was going to be in Sydney on the date of my birthday. And I've always really enjoyed, again, being a growth junkie. I've really enjoyed the content that he's put out there in the world. And he's been doing it for a long time. And so he really is, like, I remember being a kid and watching his infomercials on TV and being like, what is this? And not really resonating with Tony Robbins. And then, getting older and really dialing into his content and being like, wow, like, this is great work that he's doing. He's really providing an awesome service to humanity. Mm-hmm. And so for my birthday, it just so happened that this year has been quite this year has been unreal in its transformations, and so it popped up in my Facebook feed, and I was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna go. I think this is just something I've just got to do. Like, the tickets weren't cheap, but I was like, it's for me. It's my birthday, and people buy stuff for their birthdays. I think this would be a great thing for me to do for my birthday. And as I do, I called my girlfriend and I was like, you know what, I think for my birthday, this is what I'm going to go do. Mm-hmm. And at the time she'd been traveling, and she was traveling indefinitely, so we didn't know when she was coming home. And she was gutted because she was like, I bought you tickets to Tony Robbins yesterday. And I just completely lost it. I was just like, what are you even talking about? And like, it was the feeling of her coming home and then like going to Tony Robbins together for my birthday and just all that commingled, like, and yeah, fundamentally knowing that she was coming home after such a long period apart was also probably the big one. But then also realizing that it's going to be something great, because she's on the same vein. So for both of us, seeing Tony was really inspiring. And again, that connection between her and I to go and see him together was, another icing on the cake. So that's kind of how that manifested. And so we, her and I pop along to just a weekend and going to see Tony Robbins in Sydney. And it's phenomenal, right? Because you rock up and, you're coming out of the airport, you're getting into cabs and Ubers and stuff, and the Uber driver is aware that Tony Robbins is in town because there are so many people flying in and out and booking out hotels to come see this guy. And, like, you've heard about that for musicians. I've heard about that for sporting events like Melbourne. The grand final is on, our footy grand final is on tomorrow. And so there's heaps of people from interstate here today. But this is literally for personal development, for people to grow, Yeah. And for me, that is so inspiring. Like, it is just, this guy is carrying a mission and, spreading his highest value, which is love, and his love for humanity. And he's just literally just on that vein. He's attracting and helping people live their highest potential, unleash the power within, and just like I find I'm completely inspired by that, by the human potential that he exhibits. And even when I got to the show, it was got to the event the first day, 6,000 people at this event, and I'm looking at the line out the front, and people are rocking up with me, and they're mega pissed. Yeah, they're like, oh, this is a huge line, like it goes around the block and then around the block and then some. And like I'm not exaggerating by saying there was at least 500 people in the line. Yeah. And I'm looking at this line and I am ear to ear grinning. Like, I am just so turned on by the line. I'm just like, this is phenomenal that there are this many people doing the work on themselves, like, this is just, like, if I got nothing else out of Tony Robbins, like, this is enough, what I mean? Like, it was phenomenal just to see that. And then and then Tony Robbins begins. You go on stage and he has a very again, inspirational energy, in that a room full of 6,000 people, you feel like you're having an intimate conversation with him. And this was more, even greatly more exemplified because it was on the second day he's not there. So day 1 and 3, and, he's there. And so on the day that he's not there, he's got his his right hand man delivering his course, who's a great facilitator, because obviously he's Tony's right hand man. But the room feels like there's 6,000 people in there the next day. Whereas on the first day and the third day, it's like literally you don't forget that there's people around you, but you're completely connected to his energy, and you're like, it's very intimate. So how he fills the space is very unique, and I highly recommend anyone getting along to an event to experience it, because I guess the whole training is about being in a peak state. Unleash the Power Within is all about peak state training, and Tony is a peak state coach. So a big thing, I guess the fundamental thing that I got away from day 1, other than walking on hot coals, was the embodiment of basically that, there's this, if you will, there's your relationship to reality, which is completely influenced by your perception, and your perception is completely influenced by your state, right? So Tony talks all about state management in terms of getting you to peak performance, because it's your state that will influence your perception, which will influence your reality, which all makes great sense, and I think we're all sort of aware of that at some level. And then in that, he discusses that your state is managed by one of two things: A, your focus, and B, your physiology, which is just a fancy way of saying your physical body, your body language. Again, something that most of us are aware of, if what I'm thinking of is impacting my reality, and how my body posture is related to, if I've got slumped shoulders, it's more likely that I'm going to be depressed. If I've got my hands on my hips, I'm more likely to be confident. Simple stuff like that. But he really spends a whole day priming you of, get up out of your chair, get the shit excited, and just, you're literally pumping your fists in the air, and you're getting yourself in a state where your physiology is full on in a peak state, like you are ready to charge. And then he delivers the content to you where he goes, feel your peak state, own your peak state. What's it like to be in peak state? This is you in peak state. What could you achieve in peak state? How far away from your current, from your everyday reality is peak state? You generated this all on your own. So it's very empowering in that manner, because you realize that, the power is within. It's called Unleash the Power Within very wisely. And then continuing that training all day and realizing the power of your focus and your physiology, he literally embeds and grounds all that heady cognitive process into your body by taking you across a walk across hot coals. And these coals are, again, he's American, so he talked in Fahrenheit. So they're 1,000 to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius. But it's hot. in a word, hot. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's night, and you walk across these hot coals, and you come out on the other side. Your feet are completely fine, and it's a really empowering experience, because you realize the power of your mind. I've got this belief that I'm in I have this complete romantic relationship with the idea of the placebo. Is how much of you was doing the healing, and how much of the pill was doing the healing. And just how powerful our mind and our experience is in everything. And so for me, that was a really powerful experience. I'll put myself out there and say it felt kind of spiritual. It felt really warrior, really tribal, getting out there and walking across hot coals. Felt really spiritual. Felt like a great experience. And just while I'm sharing that, something that's really waiting to be poured out of me is that he, he's up there for 14 odd hours, He doesn't piss, he doesn't shit, he doesn't eat, he barely stops to drink water. He's a machine. Like, he is committed, again, health and purpose. He is on purpose. Like, he has immense amount, like, people in the rows are sitting there falling asleep, hungry, agitated, been to the bathroom many times, myself included, retired to the bathroom many times. He is going. He goes and goes. He facilitates the whole 14 hours. He does not stop for lunch. He does not, you go get lunch. Tony's going, and just that dedication to, like, providing value and doing the best that he can in the short time that he's got with people. Again, super inspirational. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an incredible guy. It definitely inspired me, and I've looked at his events. It's not something I've had the opportunity to go to, but I heard, what is it, Unleash the Power Within, the one that you went to?
Yeah, and then there's another one that he does, which I'm really excited to get amongst, his Date with Destiny.
Yeah.
But I think
So I had
it's a little bit away from me.
Yeah, I had I know someone who went to Date with Destiny, and he said it was like a rock concert. He said the energy was just insane.
Yeah, UPW was much the same, brother. Like, I have to reflect, like, because I used to go to music festivals a lot and had a great time, and then I kind of grew out of them. But this was definitely, for me, my 29th birthday. This was phenomenal, right? Like, yeah, like, he uses, electronic music to get the and just great. Like, he uses the tracks and the music very poetically, very timingly, to elicit emotion out of you, and it's brilliant how they've orchestrated the whole thing. So you feel like you're at a festival, it literally feels like a concert, but you're growing in the process. And on that note, like, on my birthday, he did a bit of an example of the Date with Destiny work, and he spent he spent like four odd hours doing this, where he helps you dive into your limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
And it's a really intense process. And he talks about how Date with Destiny, you do this over many days, and you do it with a lot more of your beliefs. But let's just say for one of them is like, I'm not enough, and that's my limiting belief. And then he goes, okay, now sit with that limiting belief, okay. And it's just like, okay, you're sitting with the energy of it. And he goes, now own it, like, as if that was your only belief. And it's like, no, I don't want to do that. And it's like, do it. And it's like, oh, okay. And then you sort of sit with it, and he's like, okay, now 12 months from now, this has been your driving primary belief. Yeah? Like, this is your operating belief. What's happened to you because of this 12 months from now? Think about what you've achieved and what you haven't achieved 12 months from now, because for me, it was like, okay, you haven't been feeling like you're enough. Right, cool. Okay, 2 years from now, how's that feel? And it's like, oh, that's getting really icky, man. Like, not being enough and then not doing what I wanted to do. Oh, shit. Okay, and he goes 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And the whole room is going through this process. So the energy of everyone being stuck with their limiting belief is compounded, because the whole 6,000 people around you are going through the same process. Wow. And it is just visceral. It's like, you are disgusted with yourself for your belief. And he goes, how does that feel? And it's just like, man, just stop it, bro. Like, it's just, this is you're getting the edited version, but man, it was like, people are swearing, it's full on, people are moaning, and it's a really intense guttural process. And then he goes, how does it feel to know that this is your limiting belief? And then like, finally he releases you, and he goes, think about how much longer you are willing to put up with this state. And if it's not serving you, know that you are the one that can, like, transform this and move on from it. And then you just, boof, and you just start, like, you literally start affirming. And you push yourself into your physiology of peak state, and you really release yourself into that. And it's exhausting, brother. But, and for me, I absolutely loved it. It was an intense, very difficult process, but, like, I could not imagine a better way to spend my 29th birthday. Literally shedding beliefs that did not serve me and growing on a day that is celebrating my growth. So for me, it was just an amazing gift. I'm really grateful to my partner Kay. It's a blessing, and it was an absolutely amazing experience. And again, just the people you meet, along this journey are phenomenal. And just to meet the people that we met at the course, yeah, just very heart opening and very touching.
Yeah, sounds awesome, and like a lot of learning compressed into a short amount of time, which is powerful and great. So yeah, I'll definitely have to look into one of those myself. So there's a couple of questions I like to ask people at the end of the interview, just to get your take on things. The first one is, what is your best tip for people looking to upgrade their consciousness today?
In a word, it'd be meditate. Yeah, in something that's a bit more casual, sit with your shit. Sit with your shit. So, I got this from basically Nat Hendricks, who was the first interviewee on my podcast show, and she was my first ever yoga instructor, and she really embodied that. She's like, sometimes you've just got to sit with your shit, and it's something that's has really been coming true and has been powerful for me time and time again. Is in terms of lifting your consciousness, I think there's a lot of community and a lot of work towards love and light, but as with the yin and the yang, there's you got to honor the darkness. If there's no darkness, then there's no light. It's a complete balance. So it's positive thinking is great. I touch wood, like I swear by it. But then there's also the ownership of your shortcomings and your darkness and your shadows that I think is important to sit with. And sometimes that is just it feels like you're sitting in your own shit. It's like maybe you have anger issues, or maybe you have shame issues, and it's just like just sitting in that and just allowing yourself to be like feeling ashamed or feeling angry, and just not positive thinking your way out of it, and just sitting with it and going, yep, this is the full spectrum of my consciousness expressing itself, my experiencing itself, and it's not about running away from it, it's about sitting with it. And in that, for me, meditation is again the key, because for me, meditation is all about observation. So I get to sit there and observe my spectrum, whatever it's presenting at any given time. And yeah, for me, I don't think there's anything healthier. And so yeah,
that's awesome.
That would be
definitely get where you're coming from with that. Yeah, definitely. And the second question would be, what would be your best advice on how people can contribute to the rise of humanity?
Oh yeah, bro. So be you. Just it's as simple as like that. That is boom. Like that's all just be you. I share this in the vein that, okay, to give it some context, like I started a podcast and all these friends around me were like, the reflection I got back from my community was less, well done, good job starting a podcast. I wasn't looking for that, but that's what you'd anticipate. Instead I got, wow, how courageous are you? I had more feedback about the courage that it took to do something that, like I said before, like energy arrives and stays around for a long time when I'm doing these podcasts, which I really enjoy doing. When I'm doing what feels like what I'm meant to be doing, and so being you, especially in today's society, and the trip to Kenya, and again all the travels and the social programming is a challenge underneath everything that society is trying to put on you to become, to mold, to market, to sell, for you to consume. It takes courage to be you, and I think that's a big part of the it's like me celebrating the fact that it's okay for me to be crazy, to be loco, to be whichever the way, whatever, up, down, upside down I want to be, and I think that is fundamentally, that for me is huge. If you give me 2 seconds, I'd love to embody this. There's a quote I wrote on my mirror, and yeah, I have to share it with you. It's by Marianne Williamson. She wrote the book A Course in Miracles.
Right.
I'm not sure if you're aware of that book, but she clearly writes, and she goes, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within all of us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others."
Wow. That's awesome.
So be you.
Awesome. Really love that answer. Definitely some powerful advice that people can take on and apply. And yeah, you definitely see the impact and the transformation really that would occur in your life. So thank you so much for sharing that. Where can we find out more about you? Are you setting up a website at the moment, I think?
Yeah. I website is under construction. www.amrit-sandhu.com. That's AMRIT-SANDHU. And obviously the podcast Inspired Evolution is available on iTunes. The podcast will be hosted on the website in the next week, so I'm really excited about that. Obviously I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram as well as Amrit Sandhu. So yeah, available everywhere and totally always open to feedback, to like, again, if you haven't figured it out yet, go back and listen to the episode, because connection is one of my highest values. It would be a blessing to hear from you. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Amrit. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, your knowledge. It's just been a great interview, and I definitely have to connect again in the future. And I wish you all the best of luck with this new journey that you're on. So yeah, just thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing, Chris. I have an immense amount of respect and gratitude for what you're doing with your podcast, and it's it's a big part of being seen doing the work that you're doing is always a challenge, and just especially around like spiritual work. And so I'm really grateful and just have a lot of respect for the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for holding space, and yeah, it's an honor to be here today. So thank you so much for that. Highest gratitude.
Thank you. I really appreciate the support. So that is all for today then, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. Definitely check out Amrit's work and check out his podcast Inspired Evolution. I'll put some links in the show notes for you to check out as well. So that is all for today. Hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I will catch you all again next time. Take care. Bye bye.